Well, hello everyone, and thanks for joining us. Um, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk today about how you can handle dynamic applications. Dynamic applications can be challenging when you're doing automated testing because things are constantly changing. Um, I've got a lot of experience testing retail applications, and that's a good example of a dynamic application where you might have an online store. And when you're running your automation, sometimes the products that you put into your test data maybe aren't available anymore, or maybe prices change. In fact, in one environment that I was working in, we ran a particular test so many times that we actually depleted the inventory. And so the test was failing because there just weren't any more of that particular product. And 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 when we learn that kind of lesson, we've learned, well, maybe we really shouldn't be hard coding so much of the data that goes into a test when the particular item that we were ordering didn't really matter. We were just testing the functionality of the application. So in order to get around that problem, we developed another technique of making the automation a whole lot more flexible. Some of you know, because I've worked with many customers that have issues where the particular day of the week that a test is run, if it's the first of the month or the last of the month or a Tuesday versus a Friday, it could actually impact the system responses, again, based on the domain of your application. So this is the problem that I'm talking about today when you have situations like that. So what we're going to do in this presentation is we're going to learn some new techniques, maybe new to some of you, on how to randomly select your test data at runtime as part of the execution as the test, rather than the sort of traditional way, which is where you hard code all of the test data ahead of time. So when you take a look at the data table in my test, you're going to see that I'm providing very little data. And therefore, if I have very little data, then there's very little data that would have to be maintained. So we'll get to that in a little bit. So we're going to talk about how we randomly select items, whether they be products in a store or anything in the application. We're also going to talk about how to design a strategy for verifying without predefining what the expected result should be. So in other words, we're going to pick up the expected result from the application as the test is running. We're not going to try to predict what the price is. We're going to figure out what the price is, and then we're going to compare it later on in the application to make sure that the price is the same. So we're going to be using INI files to do that. So we're going to talk a little bit about storing data and verifying data from INI files. So before I actually show you the test, I'm going to manually walk through some of the different components of the test, some of the things that I think are the most interesting. So we're going to talk a little bit about randomization, but before I do that, I want to give you a little introduction to the problem. So, here we are on Amazon's website. I think most people know Amazon, so that's why I decided to use Amazon as the target for this particular seminar. But if I went ahead and searched for pens, and I clicked on search, I'd get a page that looks like this. So this is the search page. And you can see that there's, if you search for pens on Amazon, you're going to get a lot of hits. So there's lots of different packs of pens that you could buy. And even though they're all different, there's something very common about them. They all have a description. They all have a price. And so if I'm interested in testing Amazon's ability to, search, order, put into the cart a product, I don't really care which pen I use. I could pick any of these. In fact, I don't even care if it's pens. I can put many, many different kinds of products in, but I went ahead and said, okay, we're going to use pens for this demonstration. And so instead of in my test data, deciding that we're going to use this particular pack of pens and this price, this approach says, nah, I'm just going to pick a pen randomly and I'm going to grab the price on the search result page, and that's going to be my expected result. Because what I really care about when I'm testing an application like this is that if I'm given a price of $15.09 and I put it in my cart, it better not be more than $15.09. People are not going to be happy about that, right? That would almost be like false advertising. So we can pick up the description and we can pick up the price as part of the test. And then we can use that on the various pages. So for example, I'm just randomly going to pick this one. If I pick this one, I'm then going to go to a product page. Now the product page is going to, again, have the description and the price. And I could pick up more information if I wanted to, but I wanted to keep our example relatively simple. So I could pick it up here. I could then add it to the cart. And if I add it to the cart, and then I go to the cart, here's where I better see the same price and the same description of what I ordered. So that's what this test is going to do. It's going to search for a pen. It's going to randomly pick a pen. But before it does that, it's going to grab all the data. It's going to grab the description and it's going to grab the price. Then it's going to go to the product page and it's going to grab the description and the price. And then it's going to come to the cart and it's going to grab the description and the price. I'm just going to remove this so my cart is empty. I'll have this set up for when I'm ready to run the test for you. And so now let's take a look at the automation on how to do that. You now have a good understanding of what it is that the test is going to do. So here's how we're going to randomly select the row in the table. So you know that in our Actions Explorer, there's this class called Random. So we're in the Actions Explorer classes, Random, and we have the ability to generate a random number. And so what I'm doing here, and I'm going to show you the actual step in a moment. I just wanted to highlight a part of it. What I'm doing is I'm getting from search results, and I'll show you the definition of that in a minute, and the table that I've defined that includes all those blocks that we were looking at. I'm getting all the objects because I want to find out how many there are. So my arrow is unfortunately blocking this, but it says count. And so I'm getting a list of all of the blocks, all of the different pens that I could buy, and I'm getting a count of that. And then I'm calling our random generator, and I'm saying, give me a random number between 1 and the total number of blocks on that page. So that's how I'm randomly deciding, or I shouldn't say deciding, I'm randomly picking which item I'm going to select as my target item. Now let's go look at that in AscentialTest. I want to show you a couple of things. So the first thing I want you to see, let's make this a little bit larger. First thing I want you to see is the definition. This might look a little odd because normally we think of rows as being, rows going horizontally across. But if you look at this table, and it is a table of sorts, it's not really a horizontal table. It's really more blocks. And so, when I created my table in AscentialTest, it is a web table. This is a row. So each row has a picture of the product, a description of the product, and the price. And in this demonstration, we're going to be focusing on here, the description. So this is the description, and this is the price. So these are the two items that I'm going to be picking up on each one of those pages so that I can do that verification. So you see that now, the table, and you see how it's constructed. And again, product description and product price. Now let's go take a look at the step. Oh, and I should point out that So we're here on the search result page, but then if we go over to the product page, you're going to see the same thing. So here now on the product page, we have the description and we have the price. And if I went over to the cart, which is sort of the place where I'm going to do all the verification, again, you'll see the description and the price. Where's that price? Right here. Okay. So we see those two attributes of the pen that we want to verify. Now let's go ahead and take a peek. This is the one I wanted to show you. We'll go back and look at the test later. But here's now there's no arrows blocking, so you can see what I'm doing. So if you think back on that page again, right here, so we're on the search results table. So this is the table that we're dealing with. So we go to search results, and the search results table, row, all, get objects. So if you do that, it gives you a list of the blocks, essentially. And then I'm saying, I've got my list, and I'm calling count out of my Actions Explorer. So if I go to list, you see count. So I'm doing a list count. That gives me the number of rows. And then again, my random generator, I'm saying from 1 to the number of rows, just give me a number. And so it's going to give me a number between 1 and the total number of rows. So I don't ever have to worry about getting a number that's too big. Then the very next thing that I want to do is I want to get the text. Remember, I'm going to get the text for the description and the price in 3 different places in the application. But I'm using that random row in order to do that. So when you run it, when I run it, if I run it for you multiple times, you'll notice it picks a different product every single time I run it. So I'm just using whatever I get as a random from this statement right here. We'll talk about this in just a moment. So that's the first part, is randomly selecting the object, which is very different than maybe the way you're used to doing automation, where you specifically pick in your test data which item you're going to select. Okay, but in a dynamic environment, that's maybe not the best way to do it, because like I said, that object might not be there. That price might not be the same. So now let's talk about how we're going to store that information. So I've already told you we're going to pick up the price and the description in 3 different places in the application. And what we're going to do is we're going to use an INI file in order to write that data. So I think most of you are probably familiar with INI files because we use it for other things like incrementing objects and things like that. So here I've got an INI file that I'm opening, and I'm going to set a value to the INI file. And I'm using the test case ID. And then so that's the section. Here's the L value, and here's the R value. So L value, R value. We'll look at an INI file together in just a minute so you know what I mean. But this is the description, that's the item, and then there's the value. Same thing with the price, the L value and the R value. And then once I do that, I've gotten the information. Then I actually click on the product link in order to get to the next page, which is the product page. So let's just take a peek now at what an INI file looks like so that you see what I mean. So bear with me a moment. I should have opened it before. So menu item. And I think I put it right up at the top. Yep, you're there. So let's take a peek at one. So this is what an INI file looks like. Pretty simple, actually. And just make this a little smaller. There we go. So remember, I said that the test case is going to be the section. So here we have an INI file. Here's the section. It's in square brackets, and the section is just my test case, TC01. My L value on the left is description, and here's the actual value. The R value is the description. Same thing with price. So quite simple, just writing the description and writing the price. And you notice that I've named these INI files. So this one's for the shopping cart, but there's also one for the product page. Looks the same, better be the same, or there's a bug. And there's the one from search results. So on each of those pages, I'm grabbing that information and writing it to its own INI file. So each one of those pages has its own INI file, search results, product, and shopping cart in that order. That's how we go through the website. And they all have those two attributes, the description and the price. Now here I want you to take a peek at my data table. Now you notice my data table does not have a lot in it because all I'm providing is the search term, pens. And then I'm pointing to those three INI files that I talked about, search results, product page, shopping cart. So if there's little data provided, then there's little data to maintain. I mean, it's unlikely that Amazon will stop selling pens because they sell everything in the world. So probably never going to have to worry about changing the test data for this test. I showed you the INI files already, but here's what they would look like side by side. So you have the shopping cart, TC01, that's my test case ID, the description, and the price. So when we make our way through the test, we're collecting all of the information that we need in order to do our verification. Then when we get to the conclusion of the test, we need something special. We need a verification, and we created one, and we're happy to share it with you if you would like it. We have a function that we called verify any sections. And you can see that what verify any sections does is it takes an INI file and a section, that'd be that TC01, and then a list of the fields that you want to verify. And then it takes another file. So there's any file 2 and the test case ID and the description. And notice the way we did it, it doesn't have to have the same section name. Maybe for some reason you have a reason for having a different section name, or maybe you called your item something different on the other pages. As long as they are matched ordinally, we'll be able to do the verification. So what I'm doing here is I'm using the search results as my expected results, and I'm comparing first the product page back to the search results, and then finally the cart back to the search result page. So instead of hard code predicting my expected results, I'm picking up the expected results on the very first page of this test, the search results, and I'm saying, this is the description and this is the price that I expect to see on the product page and on the cart. And if they all match, then my test case will pass. If they don't match, then it's going to fail. And I purposely kind of put something in here where sometimes it will fail. I could have tightened it up so that it never failed, but I want to show you what a failure looks like. So I've got some previous tests where it did fail. Actually, I did do some improvements so it wouldn't fail quite as much. But I did want you to see that, so I didn't tighten it up entirely. So I want to give you a glimpse now of what that INI section looks like. It's not there's not a lot to it, as you'll see. I'm going to take you through it. It's not that hard to understand. So it's created it as a function. It's called verify INI sections, and you can see that it takes an INI file, its section, and then the list of values. So that would be the list of the L values. Remember, the L values are on the left, description and price in our case. Then it takes the second file and the section, right? They may be the same, they may not be the same. And then again, the list of the L values. Now, I'm saying this could be null because if they match, you don't have to give it to us again. Okay. So open the first file, and then if the first file and the second file are different, then we open that file. Sometimes you can actually use the same file. You don't have to have 3 different ones like I did. You could have the same file, but you could have different section names. I don't like to do it that way. I usually have 3 separate files. I just find it a little bit cleaner, so I do it that way. But other people who have used it do it differently. And so then if this is null, then we're just going to use one list, which is, again, the way I usually do it. So I called it description and price in all 3 cases. But if I didn't want to do that, you know, I could have 2 separate ones. But in my case, they're the same. Then we check the length to make sure that they match, because that's true, they must match. So the number of things that we want to verify in each file, we've said that's a requirement of this particular function. Whoops. And then here's how it verifies. Again, it's pretty easy. So we're looping through all those L values, and we're doing verify values. So that's just the verify value that comes with AscentialTest. And we're grabbing the section, and we're grabbing the L value from the first file, and we're comparing it to the one in the second one. And then we have a environment variable called verbose that gives more information, and I like to set verbose to true so that we see whether it, you know, a positive versus, if it's a negative, it's always going to give you, if it doesn't match, it's always going to give you an error message, but I like to show that they matched as well. And we'll see what that looks like in the output section in just a minute. And then we simply close the files after we're done. So that's really all there is to it. There's not a lot to this verification. We're basically, when you think about it, we're just going to each one of the sections and we're just saying, give me the value of description and compare it to the value of description in the other file. Same thing with price. So not complex, but pretty powerful. Okay, so let's run it and see what happens. I'm not promising you it's going to work, but it's fine if it doesn't, because we'll talk about it either way. Okay, so I've got my Edge. I'm using Edge. It doesn't really matter. It'll run against any of the browsers. And I've got my plan, and I've got my test right here. And so I'm going to run it. And so we should see pens go in. Well, first it's going to go to the site, Amazon. It's going to put in pens, do a search. And now it's just going to pick a pen. So you see it scrolled and it picked. Okay, this is interesting. It doesn't say price in front of the price. So this one's going to fail. Like I say, I could have tightened this up a little bit more if I wanted to. And actually, this kind of failure isn't the kind of failure I really wanted. So normally on these pages, there's either it says price or with deal or something like that. So this one's not going to work. So hang on, I'm just going to kill it. And we'll run it again. So when you're doing random stuff, this is the kind of thing you have to deal with, because every page shows the price a different way. So I would need to expand that definition of what price could be in order to make sure that I hit all the different possibilities. So you notice this time it's selected a different one. Okay, this one does say price in front of the price, so I think this is going to work based on the work that I've done on this so far. So it should pick up the price. It's going to add it to the cart, which you just saw. I click the Add to Cart button. Now it's going to go to the cart. It's going to do a comparison. And then finally, it's going to delete the cart so that my cart is empty. And in this case, it passed. So we'll look at the result. And we can trace through the result if we want to, but the thing that we're really most interested in, I think, is down here. And you can see that I was verbose, so I'm showing you whether it passed or failed. And so it says that I'm comparing the product page to the search result page. I'm verifying the value of description, and it passed, and I'm giving you the particular value. And it's telling you the two different sections that it was in, because remember, they didn't have to be the same. And then I'm giving you the actual value of the price as well. And then you see it again for the cart to the search results page. So now let's take a look at what it looks like when it doesn't pass. And I've got some of those from yesterday when I was working on this. Whoops, that's not a good example. Here we go. Okay, so here's one. And this one I actually did fix. So here you can see that on the product page, it actually did match the search page, but when we got to the cart, it didn't match. I was expecting $13.44, and the actual was $16.99. Now, in some cases, like if I was the developer of this application or testing, I'd be concerned, right? Because it's like, oh no, in the cart, it's more expensive than what we advertised on the product page. But the reason was, in this particular case, Amazon was offering these deals. And so my price pickup wasn't strong enough earlier on. I worked on it a little bit more. So it was picking up the deal price, but then I didn't opt for the deal in the test, and that's why it ended up being higher in the cart. So this was not a problem in Amazon. It was just that my test wasn't smart enough yet to handle that kind of thing, but I fixed it when I noticed it. So there was a deal price and then a regular price, and I was just dealing with regular price. So that's how that all worked. And so now you've seen what a failure looks like as well. So just to kind of summarize where we've been, I talked to you about how you can randomly select the test data as part of the execution. So just to remind you, I was grabbing the number of blocks. That was my max number. And so I grabbed a number between 1 and the max, and I used that to select my product. And then our verification was designed so that we could pick up the description and the price from the search results from the very first page, and then use that, store that, and use that as the expected results. So I didn't predict expected results ahead of time. They're going to be different every single time I run the test. What I care about is that the cart always reflects what was originally provided in the search results and on the product page. Now, if I wanted to actually buy the stuff, I could have gone further and started to check out, and then of course I would check it there as well. Okay. And we talked about how we use the INI files to not only store the description and price in this case, but also to verify using that function that I talked about. So if you have any questions, I have more that I'm going to show you, but it's about the new release, so I wanted to just give you an opportunity right now. If there's any questions in the question pane, I'll answer them now before I move on to a few things about 9.90 that I want to show you if you haven't seen them yet. So Sandra, are there any questions for us yet?
Yes. About select random rows, the data selected with the snapshot could be limited in the profile settings to, for example, 300 rows. How to prevent that the random row number is higher than the row limit set for data tables?
Oh, okay. I see. So like, for example, in a Power Builder application, that's a really good question. So on the web, you wouldn't have to worry about that because there is no max rows in a web application. But if I were to do this in a Power Builder application where I might have limited my max rows, um, then what I would do is I would compare the number of rows to the max rows, and I would use whatever the smaller number is. So that's a great question. Um, it would, because you're right. Oh, well, actually, no. You know what? As I think about it, in the snapshot, it wouldn't matter because in the snapshot, if you've set max rows, many of us set it to 500, right? But there could be 3,000. But that actually works at runtime as well. So you're never going to get a number greater than the max rows. So actually, it wouldn't be a problem. It would not pose a problem with you because it's going to be limited at runtime, just the way it's limited as at design time.
Okay, thanks.
Interesting question though, but I don't think it would be a problem.
Okay.
Is there another question?
That's all for the moment.
Okay. If you guys think of other questions as I go forward, just don't hesitate to ask. I just want to remind all of our participants, if you guys have suggestions of things that you'd like covered in these seminars, please email them to support@xenix.com. I was saying to Sandra earlier, I've got plenty of things that I know we can talk about, but I'd like to always make sure I'm talking about what you guys are interested in. So those of you that participate in these seminars, and I know that a lot of the folks that show are the same folks quarter to quarter. So if you have suggestions, don't be shy about it, even if it's basic stuff, because we have a lot of new customers, and I know that not everybody is an expert. So if there's things that you think are even kind of basic that you'd like explained better, by all means, just suggest them. There's going to be plenty of folks like you that would like to know about whatever it is that you're curious about.
We
So what?
received another. Sorry, Brian. We
Sure.
received another question.
Yes.
Can we use INI files comparison to verify data from one file contains data from other files, not only exact match?
Oh, not only exact matches. Let me just make sure I got the question right. Actually, Sandra, can you read that to me one more time? I want to make sure I got it. Let me turn up my volume a little. Sorry.
Yes, I just have received more an example. For example, on search page, we have short description, but on products, there is long description.
Ah, another really good question. So, yeah, and if the short description is a subset of the long description, then we actually have another function that you should ask us for. It's not part of AscentialTest, but it's something that I wrote probably for a customer or one of my own projects that does a partial match. So in that case, we would modify that verify.ini to not use the verify value, but to use the partial match to verify the description. It might work fine to do the verify value on the price, but on the description, since there could be short and long, we'd want to use that other verify that will verify that that's a part of. So that would be a change to the verify INI files, but that's a really good idea. And that could be very, very easily done because we've already got that verification. So we could just slap it into that function. In fact, I would probably add a switch to that function that would allow me to signal whether or not I wanted to do an exact match or a partial match. But yeah, that's a great question, and that wouldn't be hard to implement using the strategy that we've got.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I have another one. Would it be possible to store that data in global variables? Does AscentialTest have a kind of global variables to cache data?
Yeah, okay, that's another good question. Yes, you could. In fact, there's other ways you can do it too. You know how like steps have that shared variable. I'd probably do it that way instead of a global. But you know, you have that ability to share. Let me just point it out in case anybody's not sure what I'm talking about. So you know that we have in parameters and out parameters, but we also have shared. So another way to do this would to create a data structure. So you'd create a record that would have the description and the price. It'd be a simple record in my case because I only have those two attributes. But you could have a piece of data that is shared amongst the different steps. And so you could write a record for the search results page to that list of record. You could write another record for the product page, and then finally another record in this list of record for the cart page. So at the end of the test, that shared variable would have in the list of record, you'd have the 3 different records, and then you could write a comparison there. That would be one way of doing it. You could do it with global variables as well. I don't really see an advantage of doing it that way, but it could be done. So yes, there's many different ways of doing that if you didn't want to use an INI file. INI files can be a little bit tricky in that when you're running your tests on, say, multiple machines at the same time, I think if I was going to be doing that, I might opt for doing it as a shared variable between steps instead of using an INI file. So great question. I hope I answered it completely. If I didn't, fire back to Sandra and she'll clarify for me.
Okay, no more questions for the moment.
Okay, yep. And again, if people think of other ones, just go right ahead. In the meantime, I'm gonna show you a couple of new things that we did to the user interface. So if you haven't played with AscentialTest yet, or if you've played with it but maybe just didn't notice a couple of things, I want to point them out to you. So it kind of occurred to us recently that we had this workspace and we always called it steps, but it wasn't really just used for steps. So minor thing, but steps and tests, it's a whole lot clearer. The other thing that you might have noticed is this. You see that there's a bunch of tabs here, and the one that's selected is a brighter color. Well, previous to the new release, these were just sort of a shade lighter than this. And I always noticed in support that no one could ever find these tabs. When I would say, go to your test, it's right there on your desk already. Nobody would ever do that. They'd always go back to the Explorer and they'd find it again and they'd double click it and it'd be like, it's right there. But I think the reason why nobody saw it was because it was just a shade. It was almost this color. You just never even noticed them. So we decided to just lighten them up. So they're kind of bright and they're in your face and you can see them. So hopefully that's going to be helpful to folks because again, I noticed a lot of people were going back over and finding them again when they were sitting right there, right in front of you. Let me get this out of the way. So we talked about the rename yet. I want to show you something else that you might have noticed. Some folks might have noticed it when I showed the results of that last test that failed. So another thing that I've noticed over the time is that people don't know that you can double click on a line number here. It's not that obvious, or it wasn't that obvious before, but hopefully people have gotten in the habit of when they see an icon like this, and this is our navigate icon. You can see that icon used in various places in the user interface. Here's one right here. I believe there's another one on the test plan itself. If we look on the bottom, there's another navigate icon here. So what we decided to do was we're using that navigate icon here now. Hopefully people will then see that and just intuitively know, oh, the navigate icon, I can double click on this. Oh, I sort of showed you the other one that I was about to show. Anyway, that's the next thing I was going to show. I was going to show you this, but so anyway, a navigate icon. So that's the next thing in the results file. Hopefully now it's going to be clearer that you can double click. Again, let me go back there in case somebody didn't know. whenever you see an error message in AscentialTest, there's going to be a call stack number underneath it, and there's going to be line numbers. And so the hope is now that you see this icon that signals to you, oh, I can double click on that line, and it will bring you right into the line so that you can, figure out, helps you debug what the error is. And so the last thing I wanted to point out was this dark mode. So this was a suggestion from several customers over the last year, just to kind of help on your eyes. And you can see now that, when you're staring at a screen that's bright all the time, it can get tiring on your eyes. So we've implemented the dark mode for some of the editors. They're not all finished yet, but we're going to work on the rest of them in the next release. But you can see here I've got the dark mode set for the source editor. And the way that you do that is the toggle. So you go up to Options, Font, and you pick your editor. So this would be the Z editor. And I can just change that back to light mode if I want to. So you can toggle any of the editors that we've supported so far from light mode to dark mode, and it will remember when you close AscentialTest and bring it back up again. It's written to the registry, so it will remember what you did. This editor's been done as well. So like if I come here, this is a good example because there's a lot going on here. I can go here to Options, Font. I can go to the step editor and change it to dark mode. And so you see it's dark. Same thing with the plans. If we go back to our plan, well, there's not a lot on this plan, but I can still do it. So I can come here and do either the plan, it's Plan Suite Editor, and change it over. And so again, like if you have only that showing, then you don't have a lot of brightness in your face. I think right now we're working on the data table editor. I don't think my version has it yet. I don't think I got that yet. Let me just check. I forgot. E, who is on this call, is saying, come on, Brian, you should know that, but I've forgotten. Let's see, is it there yet? No, I don't have that one yet. So this one will be done. The output will be done. Somebody pointed out already when they were looking at the step editor that the output on the bottom wasn't done yet. So if I opened up the output, that still wouldn't be done. So that'll be done next. And we're just kind of looking for feedback on that. So if you think something is too dark, let us know. If you have other suggestions, we're certainly open to that. And so that's what I wanted to show you today. So I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. Are there any questions, Sandra, left? We still have a couple minutes left if there are.
No more questions.
Okay, great. So again, thank you for your time. I hope you've enjoyed the presentation. Like always, we will post the presentation on YouTube within the next couple of days. So if you've got associates that weren't able to view this, or if you want to view it again, you'll be able to get to it from our YouTube page, which is accessible, of course, from our website. So again, thanks again, and we'll see you in 3 months. Again, if you have suggestions for other webinars, please send them to us at support@xenix.com. Thanks.